Welcome to the grand finale of the PGT PLO Series in Las Vegas. We're going to go inside the PokerGO studio in just a second to bring you the conclusion of this wonderful 8-event series. The 25K PLO will cap off what's been quite the showing of 4-card poker here in Las Vegas in the PokerGO studio. My name is Remko Rinkema. Donnie Peters alongside me, and Fernando JNandez Habegger, is joining us in the booth tonight to give you some expert analysis of this stacked final table. Here's a look at the names. Ben Tollerene, reigning champ Sammy Sipila, his best friend, perhaps, Joni Jouhkimainen, also from Finland. And then we have Ben Lamb and Michael Duek. So 5 players remaining still in contention for that epic first prize of $496,000. The final 5 guaranteed $116,250. There's a lot of play left, so it'll be a deep stacked affair here in the Triangle Room. We're playing for that monolith trophy.
We're going?
And
nice.
The cards are in the air immediately. Mr. JNandez, Donnie and I both said it to each other. We wish you were there because you were so close to being there. To kick things off, give us a brief rundown of how your event went.
It's a bittersweet thing, of course. I mean, cashing a $25,000 championship is always a good result. I busted in 7th, and playing against the best players in the world, with the best players in the world on the biggest stage, it's definitely amazing. But obviously, whenever you get this far, you wish to go a bit further. And I didn't bubble the tournament, but I did bubble the TV footage, and I would love to be on that stage. Would have loved to be on that stage, especially with the players on this table today. We got such a stacked final table, worthy of a championship, $25,000. We got 2 players here, head-on-head, old school versus new school PLO legends. Obviously, Sipila, the reigning champion, who also won multiple events last time, PGT, and Ben Tollerene, also known as Ben 86. One of the, if not the winniest PLO player of all time in online poker's history, for sure.
140.
Having played with these guys for 2 days, and of course also in other events leading up to this championship,
Nice bluff.
what can you tell me about perhaps some style differences or perhaps some things you picked up on between Sipila and Tollerene?
So Ben Tollerene is a very studied player. He's part of the group with Ike, back in the day, Ben Solsky. Those are players who got involved with solvers in No Limit Hold'em and then consequently in PLO very early on, mathematically very sound, and certainly also used to pressure on the biggest stage live and online. So I would say Ben Tollerene is a very methodical player, and that might be a bit different to the Finns, certainly different to the Americans overall, like Ben Lamb, Michael Duek. They are players that have a lot of different gears. I would say they play a little bit more emotional or like less predictable, I would say. They can play very tight in certain circumstances and then very loose and aggressive. And I would say Ben Tollerene is maybe a little bit more thoughtful overall. And the Finns, I would say, they are, as most people would assume, pretty aggressive in most stages, trying to go for the win. And in tournament poker, that usually works out really well.
So we have a nice clash of styles. We have players sort of from different eras of poker. You know, Michael Duek, even though he's been around for quite some time, way more new age than guys like Tollerene and Lamb in particular. And I think Joni Jouhkimainen and Sipila have been around for quite some time too. But it is cool to see all these guys come together here and battle it out here for that first prize of just shy of $500,000. By the way, much love to everyone in the chat, both on PokerGO and on YouTube. This will be a 1-hour preview on YouTube before we head on over exclusively to PokerGO.com. Just want to put that out there. Do appreciate you all engaging with the show. Donnie, Ben Tollerene. We don't see him often, but when he shows up, he's always at the final table. What's your read on Tollerene's sort of mindset? Because we don't see him that often.
No, I mean, like Fernando said, you know, very calm, collected, mathematical. You know, I think he's going to take a very studied theoretical approach to everything. He's not going to be the most colorful personality at the final table, but it's more so that Tollerene's play is what speaks volumes more so than, you know, his voice, you know. So, but listen, he's one of the greats of all time. Probably on the PLO Mount Rushmore, if there was such a thing. You know, he's up there. Guy's incredible.
Perhaps we can use the chat to help determine who else will be fitting for that
So deep. Should we do
hypothetical
one round?
PLO Mount Rushmore.
Straddles?
I would say Ben86 has this sort of
Our
end
game,
boss
if you guys
character. Like
wanna-
he is the guy to beat, especially when it comes
take
to
whatever
heads up
otherwise.
PLO. Is one of
Maybe.
his, or used to be one of his specialties. He disappeared from the scene for a little bit, was gone for a while,
So it's a
and
no-go on the straddle.
from what I've heard, he regained interest in poker, no limit hold'em, and PLO. And what do you know? He's back, appearing on various final tables in both games.
Yeah, Tollerene was cashing live events pretty steadily all the way through 2018. Then had just 2 cashes in 2019, including a win at the British Poker Open in a 100K pounded buy-in event for $1 million. And then he definitely stepped away for quite some time. And when he returned with vengeance and did extremely well in some of the bigger Triton events, also here inside the studio. And of course, this summer finished second in the 250K Super High Roller at the WSOP for $3.5 million, his largest score to date. And with that, his most recent result was a win in event number 8 at the Poker Masters for $510K. So this man shows up with a goal, with a purpose, and the goal tonight will be to get rid of these 4 opponents that he's dealing with, as we see a small pot here between Duek and Sipila. Fernando, you know, this is always a fun exercise for us to discuss, perhaps a little harder for you to actually quantify. But who would you say is the toughest opponent at this table that you faced?
That is a good question. Out of these guys, I mean, Joni knows how to ramp up aggression a lot. He's a very creative player. He's very experienced in tournaments. He knows how to shift gears, which is essential when it comes to these late-stage tournaments. I played with Joni leading up to the final table, before the feature table when I was still in the tournament, and he knows when to raise every single hand and when to apply pressure, how to accumulate chips throughout. Obviously, now that they're playing deep stacked, it comes a bit more, what matters a bit more right now is post-flop. So flop, turn, river play, we will see a lot of medium-sized pots. But Joni is certainly a contestant. He's a very tough player to play against. I'd say that the Americans in the name of Ben Lamb and Mickey, they are probably more used to deep stacked situations because they're coming from a live PLO cash game, private game background where you probably will also see a good amount of creativity. And then Sipila, he's used to these final tables now in PokerGO a lot. He knows how to close them out. He knows how to go the distance. And I think in terms of experience and confidence, I mean, he has to be up there as well because he closed out the biggest one on the PGTs before. I don't think he's afraid of anyone at the table. So if I would guess, pretty much anyone on this table thinks that they are worthy of winning this title. I don't think they lack confidence. But what I think is interesting is that they do differ in style. And today we will see in which way that it sort of manifests in different hands.
Yeah, I feel as though players are incentivized to play rather conservative right now. Looking at the stack sizes, we're only playing 15K, 30K with a 30K big blind ante. Sipila on 100 bigs, Tollerene 101, Joni on 97, and then Lamb on 69, and Duek the short stack, I mean, in quotations there, with 45 big blinds. So incredible amount of play at this table right now.
Yeah, as far as tournament goes, there isn't that much to gain by winning chips right now. Imagine you would double your chip stack from 100 to 200 big blinds. I mean, there's certainly an EV boost, but losing your chips right now obviously means you cannot win this tournament. So you will see people kind of small blinding it. Ben here has a full house, faces a bet of Sipila, makes the call in position. He can reevaluate on the river. Does he want to bet big? Does he want to raise? It really comes down to probably the sizing choice and the river card. We don't know yet what Sammy is holding here in the small blind, leading out on the turn. There was no flush draw possible. Some straights get there on the 8. Also, one thing to keep in mind is this is not the first event of the PGT. These guys have been playing for 8 days straight. And we're talking about 9, 12-hour days, short nights, sometimes followed up by an 8 a.m. golf.
Well, maybe that's where Tollerene gets his edge. He shows up towards the end of these series when everyone gets tired, and then he comes in to clean up in the final event.
For sure, I've seen Ben, he brings his own food, which definitely shows this sort of level of expertise that you will see with all the very high stakes No Limit Hold'em tournament players. Brings his own food, knows how to preserve energy. The Finns, they come in a group, they're usually a bit more gambling on the golf field, maybe opening a couple bottles of wine, which we did yesterday night. So they will certainly feel the length of this tournament a bit more than someone like Ben.
Tollerene here betting 225. Sipila has not spread his cards out properly, so we haven't seen them yet.
He seems to have a decision. And if he comes in for the river check raise, this is a very dicey spot. Based on body language, it doesn't look like he wants to raise, would be my read.
Also doesn't feel like he wants to fold.
I'm not sure where his time chips are. I guess behind his chips?
Maybe he has them leaning in an upright position behind his stack. That's the only thing I can think of.
So for anyone who isn't familiar, you have 30 seconds to act post-flop, and then a time chip will be used to add another 30 seconds. On the final table, you received 8 time chips, and you received 10 in the beginning of the tournament. And there goes one of the time chips. He ends up folding.
All right, so Sipila lets it go, and Tollerene takes this one down. You mentioned bringing his own food. Tollerene does. You mentioned the Finns perhaps being a bit more boisterous, also indulging in some wine. Where do you put yourself on that spectrum?
I'd say, generally speaking, when I look at someone like Daniel Negreanu, and for people that aren't familiar, Daniel likes to talk a lot on the table. For me, that would just take too much energy out of me playing 12-hour days. So when I play, I mainly focus on preserving energy, thinking through hands. And also one thing to remember is you have 20 seconds to act pre-flop, and then you have 30 seconds to act on each street. That's not a lot of time when you play 10 hours against very good players for very high stakes. So at any point, you can blunder a hand quite easily, given the time pressure element in this tournament. And that really matters. And I think that is what you see with people like Tollerene or Ike. They play slower, they play more methodically, but they also take the game really serious. And I'd say Daniel, for example, is a great ambassador of the game. He doesn't like to play slow, but sometimes that can also cost you if you play against players of this caliber. So I would say I would place myself in I definitely like my sleep. I like working out. I don't necessarily go crazy on the table when it comes to table talk. But to be honest, I also took 1 glass of wine yesterday.
Did it help?
Yeah. I mean, it helped with adding more patience to the relentless raising of Joni on pretty much close to the bubble, because he started getting a chip stack there on my table and just raising exactly 100% of all hands.
Wow.
And it's very interesting because we had a couple of kind of drama spots around the bubble. So one of them was with Elis, one hand where we were 11 players left, 9 are paid in this tournament. Elis 3-bet pre-flop with a short stack. I would guess probably around. He had around 400,000 chips, and he 3-bet to 270, close 300. He got cold 4-bet by Ben Lamb, and he ended up folding for only 100K more. And then right in the next hand, we had an interesting spot that ended up making him bust the tournament. We'll talk about that in a moment. We have a hand here between Joni. That just picks up the blinds here. Very nice queen, queen, 10-10 hand.
This is going to take
So
fucking forever.
what ended up happening is Elis has very few chips and raises under the
Do
gun.
something about it, Mickey.
Ben Tollerene on the button calls.
You guys just want to put our stacks
now-
in the middle and flip?
And now we have Sipila in the big blind who's asking
500K.
how many chips does
I would like
Elis
to see the
have?
hockey match
Because
against
he
the,
wants to, it seems like he
but
wants
I
to
don't think
min
we're
Get
raise
it in there.
in order to allow Elis to shove over the top and isolate it to one player. So he re-raises to 165K, and then Elis shoves for something along the lines at this point of like 200 and something. And Ben Tollerene figures out it's not an official raise
Oh my god.
by 10,000. So he just calls. And Sipila calls as well. And Sipila could have raised smaller, so the min raise was 155, but he made it 165.
Oh man.
And if he would have made it 155, it would have been a reopen. And the way the hand ended up playing out is that Elis made a flush and would have won against Sipila, but Ben Tollerene made a better flush. So given the misclick, what ended up happening is Elis busts in 11th place, because basically there was a misclick in play. So that was
Wow.
a pretty brutal spot.
That is brutal, but of course, you know, everybody plays for their own win. Even though Sipila would have much rather had it one-on-one there in that showdown situation, but it does help to get an accurate number out there to figure out what the math is, as we see some passive three-way action here.
Well, what's interesting in PLO, like you could actually just say raise, and if you say the word raise, it means you're raising the minimum that is allowed, and that sort of takes away the burden of the math in this instance. But of course, you still have to figure out if you can re-raise or not. And this is a spot where Sipila had a lot of chips. He wants the bubble to keep going. He wants to isolate towards one player. Maybe some people in the chat think, well, don't you want to have a bigger chance of busting one of the short stacks? But the reality is that if you have a big stack, you want more short stacks around so you can keep stealing those blinds, and that was Sipila's idea. So in a game theoretical sense, there are a lot of what we call, theoretically speaking, soft collusion spots, which are not against the rules, but it basically means that it is possible that a big stack player wants to keep a very short stack player alive because
Right.
it benefits him in stealing more blinds from the middle stack players. Very interesting tournament dynamics that exist there.
Tollerene, let's go here after Lamb bets 70K. Lamb's got this thing locked up. Tollerene, Joni, however, Rivers a set here. Given the passive nature of this hand, could see Lamb getting called here.
Yeah, Joni is considering like his blockers to a certain degree. He doesn't have a heart, so he doesn't like that too much. But who knows? Maybe we will see some. The bet is small as well. Curious call.
Yeah, call has been made, and Lamb takes it down. Donnie, I often wonder for players like Ben Lamb, who are so used to the excitement of high-stakes cash, how do they keep their
Think it's gonna take a
composure
while, Mickey?
in events like this
Oh,
when
Yoni's playing like that.
it's such a grind?
Yeah, I mean, I
Fighting
think a
along
lot of
seven
it
big
is
one pot. I don't think it's going to get it done.
not in a bad sense, but I'll use this
Yeah,
term,
let's get this out of
ego-driven,
here.
right? Like you want to be the
This is
best.
ridiculous.
You know, Ben Lamb often frequents the higher buy-in events that you see on the PGT on other tours. You know, can't be bothered with some of the smaller stuff, which is totally fine. You know, he wants to compete at the highest stakes. So, I think that's kind of part of it.
Of course, I mean, in terms of legacy and in terms of proving yourself, you know, you want to show up and tell these young Finns, I still got it. I know you guys play day in, day out, and this is your bread and butter, but I still got some tricks up my sleeve. And I think the competitive drive here is certainly one thing that drives a lot of these players. I mean, if you look at someone like Ben Tollerene, I'm sure he doesn't mind the money, but I think he definitely wants to win the tournament because he likes the competitive aspect of it. See here a limp by Tollerene and a raise by Mickey. Tollerene not backing off. These guys are very deep. So Tollerene getting a really good price on them calling. Double suited, kind of trashy hand, but does flop a piece here. Pair and a flush draw for Ben. And Mickey has a gutter, not much to work with, but the king high board is kind of good for his range. Could see him putting out a bet there. Mickey is in disguise today.
He's an interesting player in poker just because of the fact that he essentially got all of his fame from coming third place in the WSB main event, but he's not a no limit hold'em player. I mean, he obviously knows how to play it, yes, but he's a PLO guy. You know, that's what he frequents. You know, really much outside of the WSB main event, he probably just plays PLO predominantly year-round. So it's just an interesting that people will be like, oh, this is the guy. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of not his game, you know, but here we see him in his element, of course.
This is a sick card. So turning the nuts, your Broadway for Mickey with the ace-queen. This is probably the biggest contrast of two players on the table here. Ben 86 versus Mickey. You have someone who plays much more based on experience and feel in the name of Mickey, and then Ben, very methodical. Knows the turn isn't good for his range either. Of course, Mickey wants to extract further value, but it's going to be difficult to get a jack to call here, even though the jack does have a flush draw.
Yeah, Mickey could have higher flush draws himself, which is always somewhat worrisome in PLO especially. No limit hold'em, maybe not so much. But definitely in PLO, just the more combinations that are out there.
2-8.
Also, in terms of the general dynamics, so around the bubble, what you saw is that the big stacks, namely Sammy Sipila and Mickey, they battled a lot in a lot of big pots. A lot of players were only 20 big blinds deep, 30 big blinds deep, maybe even 10 big blinds deep. And they were fighting for who's winning all these chips. And they played some big pots, including also Ben 86. So these guys are certainly not, they're not here waiting for aces. They're trying to win as many chips as possible. And they're not just going to back off, because you can't. The players are too good on this table. You can't just pass up on profitable opportunities.
So throughout the tournament and prior to getting close to the money bubble, were there players who would take a more like tight, laid-back approach in hopes of making hands that would give them value? And did you see perhaps them running out of steam because of the dynamics of the table?
I think what makes the players that are currently on the final table so good is they know how to accumulate chips in the middling stage of the tournament. So the way ICM works is that the pressure goes up, and then at the bubble it kind of peaks. And before that bubble play, you really have a chance to accumulate chips, but they don't come for free. You're going to put your stack at risk, and all the players on this table right now, they aren't afraid in those middling stages to potentially bust a tournament in hopes of making more chips that they can use around the bubble and then on the final table. So I'd say there are certainly players who wait for good spots, because there are probably some players still in the field at that point that might give away some of the chips more easily. But I think at this point in this final table, everyone knows there are no easy chips here anymore.
Right.
I mean, even this hand. I mean, Lamb could have easily folded this one, you know.
This is a surprise. 10-9-7 deuce is he's not using the Ben 86 charts. That is for sure.
It's the Ben Lamb charts.
I mean, Ben very much feels like a player who is essentially going to look you in the eye and kind of be like, you either have it or you don't. Not that he doesn't understand the theory. Obviously, he's played a ton of PLO, so he probably understands it. Could he break it down in terms of charts and ranges and whatnot like Ben 86 does? I mean, maybe. But it's just kind of a different language, but still kind of like the same concepts are there.
I came across Ben Lamb the first time at the WSOP when he made this final table. He had this extremely strong presence at the World Series of Poker main event final table a couple of years back. I mean, this must have been like 10 years ago, maybe
2011.
2011. How long is that ago? Yeah, more than 10 years now. And I would say he still has this presence of he's similar to like Fox, and a guy that isn't afraid to stare you down and trying to intimidate you to a certain degree. And I'm sure he knows 10-9-7 deuce is not a call here pre-flop. So he has a reason why he's coming in the mix here. Probably trying to make a statement. He was betting the flop and getting called by Sipila. Sipila has now has flopped a straight and hopes to get a free card, which is what happens. River pairs the board on a 7. So Ben pairs to 7, but he must know that his 7 isn't good because there's a 4-liner out there. So he has the perfect hand to bluff now, blocking a lot of the full house combinations. Sipila doesn't like the river too much. He's going to check. So Ben bet the flop 3 ways, which will give his range more credit. He has the perfect blocker, the 7, and it's very unlikely he's going to win by checking. But he does give up, actually. And Sipila is going to turn over the 8-4, and Ben is not going to like that. He knows he would have won this hand by betting, very likely.
Slow play pre.
Yeah.
Like it.
Those kings? Yeah. Shocker.
This guy has different gears.
Why do you think Sipila is laughing?
It's just the Finns have a different humor.
Lamb looks dejected.
I think he's just mad at himself because at this showdown he was like, wait a moment, I could have won this hand. Why didn't I bet? And I think what you saw there is like Ben didn't take too much time. You got some time. Think your decisions
Squeeze
through.
for
He's a
bet.
fast player, but sometimes
Your raises after that flip. Enough.
I mean in those private cash games you don't tank. But this is the final table and you play against players who will tank when needed. Mickey picks up a suited ace on the button here. Certainly playable at the stack depth, but he gets out of the way. Doesn't want to get involved with the Finns right now. Flops the nuts against the flush draw. And certainly, I don't know the Finns that well, although they're definitely nice people, but I'm pretty certain that there is a little bit of an ego battle here as well. Who can go further? Who can take this down? I'm sure they both wish well to each other, but I'm sure Joni wouldn't mind taking one of these down as well. Maybe today is the day.
Sipila, by the way, an absolute crusher in PLO. His cashes this year are really funny to look at because he started it off by winning 2 events at the PGT PLO Series, making 4 total final tables, also getting a 2nd and a 7th place. Then at Triton Montenegro, he won 2 PLO events, both the 25K and the 50K. And then here he has, this is his 3rd final table. Doesn't have a win yet, but it's just so consistent and always running deep. So it's very cool to see that. Donnie, a question in the chat coming in. Is the leaderboard locked up, and what's going on with it?
It is not locked up. Do need to preface it by saying that it's not only this event running right now, we also have a 5K bounty going out in the main room. As it pertains to this final table, these players right here, Ben Lamb, Sammy Sipila, can both move into first place on the leaderboard. I believe Sammy Sipila needs a win. Ben Lamb needs 202 points, so that is first place. He also needs a win. So both of them need wins to be able to overtake Matthew Wantman, who is currently the front runner. That said, Matthew Wantman is out in the 5K PLO bounty tournament, and if Wantman is able to basically find a min cash, he could kind of just lock it up. So last I was out there, he had a big stack, did Wantman. So we might get word at some point that he does secure enough points to lock it up. So we will keep people posted on how that is going.
Meanwhile, Kings for Sipila versus Ace-Jack 4 deuce here for Lamb, 50-50. Lamb's got some alternative options towards winning this hand. Wheel draw, most prominent here.
he flopped a tricky hand. He has a pair of fours and a gut shot. No flush draw, no backdoor flush draw. He's getting a good price though. Doesn't like it and gets out of the way. Understandable, also out of position. Sammy picks up more chips. And that's really what makes him so good. He's very consistent, doesn't make a lot of missteps, and just accumulates a lot of chips throughout all stages of the tournament.
No chatter, no table talk, no Wantman versus Schulman banter going on right now. No Negreanu screaming off top of his lungs to generate some buzz here. These men are here for the business end of this tournament. Almost $500,000 up top if you're just tuning in. Thank you for joining us on both PokerGO and YouTube. We're doing a 1-hour preview on our YouTube channel. Maybe we can make it a 2-hour preview, but we need some more likes on the video. How about that? Well, I'll just put that out there for now. If you guys are engaging with the show, and if you're enjoying Fernando's commentary, we'll consider it. We'll consider extending for another hour.
All right, so Mickey comes in with the limp. First limp we have seen so far on the final table.
So with the stack sizes the way they are, what's the benefit of limping here? They're so deep.
You can limp, again, like in terms of ICM, there isn't that much benefit trying to win a lot of chips right now, but there is a lot of downside losing them. So if he raises and faces a 3-bet with this big pair, it's getting pretty dicey. He might have to fold against a 3-bet, but if he limps, he can definitely see a flop by just calling a raise. And Ben leads out on the 5 deuce deuce. The reason this makes sense is because the big blind is the most likely to have a deuce. Like, would Duek limp a lot of deuce X hands? Probably not. Sure, Ben can have a deuce. In fact, he does have a deuce. But Ben Tollerene does have 2 4s, which do block some connection. He has 1 diamond, so like theoretically this makes sense. Mickey calls with the queens, and now Ben has reasons to raise. He is trying to protect himself against 2 players, so flush draws, straight draws, over pairs. I think he just wants to raise the flop here and trying to get these hands to fold.
It's interesting you say he wants to get these hands to fold, even though he has such good equity. Would he not be okay with someone, drawing to a potential flush, to name an example?
It's just difficult to know, like, how do you play then afterwards? Let's say the turn is the jack of diamonds and you face another bet. Do you call? Do you raise? Things get really dicey. By raising the flop, you can just secure, like, you can get hands to fold that basically win 30% of the time. In this particular instance, no one had a flush draw, so he's not really protecting against that much. But it looks like there's at least a little bit of a chance he might get called by a weaker hand. Mickey here has queens. Decides against it and makes the fold. I think it's a good idea. Like, it's very hard to know where you're at with your queens at any point of the hand unless you turn that queen. And Ben Lamb, who has not seen the light so far on this final table, picks up a much needed pot, at least in terms of confidence. I think this is a good one for him.
So Sammy Sipila, the big winner here to start this final table, up over 500,000 chips, but it is still a 5-handed affair here inside the PokerGO studio. As we remind you that the PLO Trainer Preflop Pass is available on PLOmastermind.com/PokerGO. Sign up for free right now, no credit card required, and get in the mix. Both 4-card and 5-card PLO available here for free. The 6-Max PLO Preflop Ranges Trainer is available for you. So if you like the game of PLO, if you like what you see, and if you just want to sharpen your game a little bit or dive headfirst into some serious studying, PLO Mastermind has it all.
I was playing with it last night. I liked how you guys did, essentially did away with the suits and just kind of have the colors. So it's like very easy to just see, like, oh, this is monotone, this is, tri-suit, double suit, or whatever, It was just very simple.
Appreciate that.
I like the tech. I like the design.
I'm sure.
Well, did you learn anything?
I mean, yeah, it's funny. Not too long ago, I actually won a small PLO tournament on WSP.com. And like the whole time I was playing, I just had Fernando in my head. Like, use these blockers, use this, use that, right? I used to play PLO extremely tight. I feel like you need like kings plus essentially. Now you start learning like you can just use ace and king in your hand and attack certain players and stuff like that. Because I do feel like people play it very people spaz, yes, of course, but then they also play it like very tight at different stages.
Good
So it's
point.
you kind of have to just have that mentality of like being able to
7
open things
back
up when the
roughly.
time is right.
You're
So
covering?
yeah,
My biggest issue with PLO, and I evidently don't play it too much, is the way in which I get scared as soon as something comes off that I'm like scared of. Like take Jack 4-4, right? I'm like, oh, someone's gonna have a 4. Like that's like my instant
Guaranteed,
thought.
right?
Someone's gonna have a 4. Screw this. Like I'm out. Like, but that's like the instant sort of reaction I have to a flop like this. If I'm holding a big pair or if I'm holding big hearts, I'm always thinking, well, I'm drawing to my backdoor flush with high cards, but will someone else be drawing to a full house with some, some random 4, 5, 6, 7 or whatever the case may be. And I think that's a fear that many sort of beginner PLO players have.
Oh, for sure. When you move from 2 cards to 4 cards, you think, how can you ever bluff? You always have a good hand. Then as you start playing the game more and more, you realize that it's actually not that easy to have a really good hand. This is actually an interesting hand because Sammy Sipila raises ace-king 8-3 monotone under the gun. Clearly a blocker play here on the final table. He's also one of our testimonials for the PLO Mastermind PLO trainer. Uses the PLO trainer since many years. And ace-king 8-3 is not a hand you generally want to raise in PLO, especially in early position, but the rules are a bit different once you are on the final table. And blockers come a lot more into play, also pre-flop. In this case, you're blocking aces and kings, hoping to pick up the blinds, but even if not, you can obviously post-flop. You can represent things post-flop, like in this case, and keep accumulating chips. So I think what Sammy does well is that he's getting involved, giving himself a chance to continuously pick up chips. But he doesn't really get into too many hot waters, risking too many chips. He plays small pots, continuously applies pressure, and does that really well and consistently. Joni now with kings under the gun. That's a great hand you want to play. He's thinking, do I want to raise? Do I want to limp? But they're probably just deep enough where raising is the most standard play. He goes for a pot size raise.
Joni doesn't limp. Come on.
And we saw Ben Lamb folded now 7-6-6-5. Surprised to see that, given that he called 10-9-7 deuce double suited. So shifting gears here a little bit. Ben Tollerene certainly has a hand he wants to play. Goes ahead and calls. The 7-7-4-4 is a hand you can also consider 3-betting in a cash game. Don't really love to see that on the final table because when you get 4-bet, it becomes really iffy. But the call is completely standard, and Sipila with those queens is certainly going to see the flop as well. And we have 4
Can they give you
pairs
glass pen?
heading to the flop.
Huh?
Kings, queens, 7s, and 4s.
So the flop will probably be 10-9 something.
I think we'll see a set. There you go.
And there it is, king 8-3
Remember
rainbow
penna?
flop.
Large penna.
Yoni basically
some change
flops
for a
both of
20
his
also.
opponents dead.
Just
Yeah,
5.
about as dry as you can flop here.
Now the issue here is there's hardly any value to be had when you're holding a set of kings.
Exactly. When you have top set, you should look at the board. In this case, it's disconnected. There's no straight draw. There's no flush draw. So it's very hard for anyone to call. Also, theoretically speaking, the guy that calls in position, in this case Ben, he's the most likely player to have 2 kings, because 2 kings should never 3-bet unless you have ace-king-king. So the majority of your king-king combinations just flat.
Just took.
And that's why this king-high board usually gets checked to the button. Ben has a good hand to bet with, and that is because he can make better hands fold, like queens in this case. Sipila is going to fold those queens, I'm sure. But also, if he gets called by a king or by 2 aces, he has very disguised and clean outs. If he hits a 7 or a 4, he usually has a hand that is way good enough to value bet. Joni, of course, will never raise here and try to scare his opponent off. He's trying to represent 2 aces that just go for a check call, maybe a king. And it will be interesting to see if the turn connects to Ben, like a 5, for example, or even a deuce. It is an 8 of clubs. There is some connection though. Ben picks up a flush draw. So now the question becomes, does he want to keep betting? The thing is, Ben wouldn't usually bet an 8 on the flop, so he's basically saying he has 2 kings, which in this case we know it's the other way around. So I'm not sure if he's going to choose to represent. It's not the worst combo for sure, like he can make, but is Joni going to fold a king? It is tricky. Could be a little bit of an indication of how aggressive he wants to play this. All right. So this is certainly theoretically sound. This is a good play in the books. Obviously today or in this hand he's gonna run into the absolute nuts, or pretty much so. But when it comes to finding bluffs in this spot, this is a good candidate. You can still improve to a boat. If your opponent calls with a king or aces, you can make a flush. You certainly don't have the best hand now, but you have some potential. Joni, on the other side, he's basically looking at someone who's representing kings. So there's no reason to raise because he has the kings himself. He just wants to keep acting like, I got aces, I got ace king, I'm not sure.
Oh my god, quads for Jouhkimainen on the river. Now, does this also play into Tollerene's mind of like, it is now less likely that Joni has a king, or are the ace-king combos still too
It's in the
prevalent?
pot.
How much is in the pot? Because I got quads. I need to know exactly how much I'm about to win. Is it 1.6? Okay. So I would say the problem with this river is Ben was kind of representing kings on the turn. Now, it's going to be a tough task on that river to keep acting like he has kings, because there are only 2 kings left in the deck. So the times Joni has a king, which is certainly still a possibility, obviously he's not going to fold the river. Joni comes with the lead, so he's basically hoping that Ben has an 8 that now decides to call. So this is a bit of a surprise lead. He's basically hoping Ben has an 8 and calls. So we'll never find out what would have happened if Ben faces a check, but I don't think Ben is going to fall for this one. He's going to get out of the way.
All right, so Jouhkimainen takes this one down with quad kings, no big deal. We saw a lot of quads on the previous final table. We'll see in our
3, 4.
4, I think. Yeah. Well, one of them was dealt to Sammy Sipila.
Yeah.
He got 4 4s dealt to him.
Sammy is it's like, what happened there? Check call leads. He knows something doesn't smell
Something
right.
fishy is going on.
Yeah.
He led very small too on the river. It was
Yeah.
about 20% pot there. So
We call it the trampoline. You're
Oh,
trying to set him up.
yeah.
Trampoline doesn't work against Ben 86.
Try to get called. Maybe try to induce a raise there.
So is it because if Tollerene has an 8, he is likely to check back? That's why he
He
leads?
will certainly check back. Basically, I think what happened there is, in theory, you would say maybe there was a bit of a polarization mistake. So
3, 4, 3, 5.
Joni thought that Ben Tollerene might have an 8 and was betting that on the flop, but actually Ben was much more polarized. Like he either had
Yeah,
nothing,
under.
which 7-7-4-4 basically equates to, or he has 2 kings. So he was hoping that Ben was a little bit more middle of the road there on the flop, betting with the 8. Okay, so we see some action here. Mickey raises the button, Jack 8-7-6 double suited, very playable hand, faces a 3-bet. So this could be our first really big pot because
I think he just limped.
oh, he limped.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Still though, could be an
Yeah.
all-in situation. He goes for the limp, which basically means he didn't want to see a 3-bet. And Sipila figures he has the best hand. Let's make the pot bigger. He obviously covers well. And both players flop a piece here. King 10-5, 2 pair and a gut shot for Sipila. And Duek has the 8-high flush draw. So now it's really a question of how big does Sipila want to bet. There's 400 in the middle, 1.1 behind. He can either go pot, or he can go something like half pot.
1.09.
1.2 million?
1.09.
It is tricky. Potting will make the hand much easier to play for Sammy.
Pot. 400,000.
Makes sense. And the good thing about this bet is that actually Mickey has to surrender a hand with 40% equity, which is a really good result there for Sipila. Mickey not happy.
Mickey showing how he feels by putting in a high toss there.
That was that was a Sean Winter-like fold. The high fold.
But Sean Winter would look back at his cards and squint, and then moan about how.
Maybe he taught him. I mean, I saw Sean Winter was hanging out at their house, putting on the putting green that's in the backyard.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Count each other
Maybe
down
Sean
in
said,
the
"I'll teach you. You teach me putting. I'll teach you how to fold your cards." First time I ever got exposure to Joni Jouhkimainen was EPT Barcelona, Remko.
Oh my God, the hats.
When he was hammered.
The hats.
Him,
Zygmunt.
and I don't remember who the
Jeans.
was it?
Yeah, Jens was there.
But they put these
tiny
like
cards in
New
the
Year's
center, too.
Eve
Like,
festive hats on.
So, no,
they
the-
were hammered.
On the beach,
But they
right
just
outside
updated
of
this,
the
correct?
hotel where EPT Barcelona takes place, there were these,
Weird.
I guess, merchants selling all sorts of.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
like
know.
walk up and down with like
But
they
they
have like a stack of hats and like,
They had a stack of these small fedora hats, and of course, in a bit of drunken rage, I think Zygmunt bought like all of them, and then everyone walking around the room was wearing these cheap fedoras from the beach, and everybody was drinking and having a good time. That was
Nikolai Pobal won the event.
oh wow!
Just
You're, you're reaching deep.
John Juanda, 8th place. Ola Shemian,
Ice
9th
too,
place. Yeah.
I just
Those are the days.
These must have been the this must have been the deal of his life to whoever sold these hats to Zygmunt. I'm pretty sure he overpaid, probably by like 100x.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Was it the same year where was it Zygmunt who went swimming naked and then he came back and his clothes were gone? I'm pretty sure it was the same year. It happened to someone. I don't
Yeah,
recall.
I don't think it was Zygmunt, but somebody did go swimming on the beach and then they got all their clothes stolen.
Yep.
Might have also been the same year that Daniel Negreanu got pickpocketed in Barcelona.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Fun times. Fun
Fun
times.
times, indeed.
So Joni makes a folder on the button. 5-5 deuce deuce. Quite surprising. And now Ben Lamb.
Pot 480, I think.
Oh wow. No hesitation here. Comes over the top with a pot size re-raise.
Yeah, so Ben Lamb picked up on the fact that Sammy just keeps raising consistently with probably a wide range of hands and wants to bump it up to 50 big blinds deep. Takes it down pre-flop. So I think we have the stats here of who played the most hands, and it is, in fact, Sammy Sipila. You can argue, well, he has the biggest stack, but they're all playing deep stack. It's not as much based on that. I think it's just his style. Like he raises a lot of hands from various positions. Second most active is Joni and Ben Tollerene on this table, and so far Ben Lamb, in fact, 31% VPIP. But none of them are playing really tight, and that is also courtesy just to their stack sizes. There's no reason.
3.6, but I'll give you exact count.
Yeah, roughly is fine.
3.5.
3.5. 3.5.
So.
2-1.
2-1. 2 and
Change.
1.
So we have seen some shifts in the chips here. Both Sipila and Jouhkimainen, the two Finns, are way up so far to start this final table. Tollerene down 1.3 million, mostly courtesy of that hand where Joni made quads. Duek down small, and Lamb basically break even so far.
Yeah, Joni would probably play more hands if Sipila wouldn't be to his right and raise all the time. So that also influences things, of course, as well. See so raised by 10-10-6-5 to 120k, 3 times the big blind. Mickey picks up ace, king 8, 3-3 hearts.
10 seconds.
Certainly a defendable hand. It's not a great hand, but you got ace king, you got a suit, getting a good price. And Joni's probably pretty wide. Let's see a flop here. Mickey, the shortest stack player, sits on 25 big blinds, a bit more than that behind.
8, 9, 6 on the flop. Rainbow flop here.
Yeah, Joni has flopped the best blockers, 2 10s. I'm sure he's going to start applying pressure on the flop right away. And there's not really much Duek can do here. Has a pair of 8s, no straight draw. Very much handcuffed. Yeah, so I would say in terms of like summarizing the first few minutes of this final table, the Finns are the most active, the most engaged, trying to pick up chips. Ben Tollerene has been picky with his spots. He tried to run a relatively big bluff into quads. That usually doesn't go well, but he was certainly willing to try to win a pot, just the wrong timing. Ben Lamb with a couple of unorthodox hands pre, but not afraid re-raising with the kings. They're out of position, so he's looking to make something happen. And Mickey, unfortunately, wasn't able to win pretty much a single hand so far. Down around 500,000 chips from the start of this final table.
Lamb finds a very nice looking double suited ace, Jack, Jack 5.
He's choosing to raise a bit smaller than the other players, 110,000. That is a very trashy hand. He's tempted given the good price, but no suit means no play here.
I see that Sammy posted on Instagram. Big day for the villa,
Oh boy.
and tagged Joni and Mickey, so
Oh, I guess,
they're all together. I mean, they're all just hanging out.
I mean, for players like these, this is the kind of event you sort of live for, you know? High stakes, playing against tough opposition. Everyone
Is this yours or
probably
mine?
has some swaps going on, so whoever wins from the crew is going to probably throw a party, buy some nice bottles. By the way, quick reminder here for all the PLO fans out there that on Thursday, the Super High Roller Bowl PLO will kick off. It's a 100K buy-in, a 3-day event. We're streaming every single day. Thursday, we're starting late, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then Friday and Saturday, you get full-day coverage starting at 2 p.m. Pacific time for day 2 and the final table. Last year, of course, 38 entries, 7 places got paid. It was Isaac Haxton versus Ben Tollerene, oh, excuse me, Jared Blesnick, heads up for the title. I believe they played heads up for like 7 hours. And ultimately, Blesnick came out on top.
I feel like Haxton wanted to punch him by the end of it.
Yeah,
with all the antics, opening cards. I mean, it was a thing.
I mean, Haxton also, from my memory, played fairly slow. Lots of limping. You know, we didn't see a lot of big pots. Blesnick had plenty of time to occupy himself with some some side action there.
Sipila sees an opportunity here, turns, flush draw, pair of 6s.
2 pair, snap fold.
For those that are catching us on YouTube, please know that we're moving over to PokerGO.com at the end of the first hour.
And 7-6-5 here into the muck. Duek picks up a big pair, king, queen, queen, 10. Sitting on 22 big blinds. Good hand, time to raise. He's gonna come in for the limp. So he kind of wants to prevent facing a 3-bet. But building the pot at this point, pre-flop, yeah, it sucks to face a 3-bet, but oh wow, you will face a raise, that's for sure. Ace, Jack, 10, 3 double suited by Joni.
Raise 160.
Do you like Mickey's approach by limping? We've seen him do it a few times now.
I'd say it's kind of close. I think he's certainly aware, like, the two players behind him, they cover him and their fins. So he's a bit cautious. I mean, it can't be too bad. Like, now he's in position, relatively deep spot, and he has the best hand currently. But this could be iffy to play post flop because those queens, if unimproved, are difficult to play. This is not unimproved. he has a set and a flush draw, and this is far from over because Joni has flopped a wrap and a backdoor flush draw. So ace, jack, 10, 3 means he can make a straight on an ace, jack, 10, or a 9.
400,000.
And he's gonna pot it. Mickey is gonna be ecstatic. He's like, wait, do I have a set? Is this a set and a flush draw?
He quickly moves all in. Joni wastes no time, makes the call, and
That's it.
Jouhkimainen will see that he only has 9 outs. And I say that because he's up against the worst possible hand.
Yeah, he was
his
hoping
four
to run
space
into
open?
something different. I mean, I'm talking here about Mickey
I
was hoping
prefer
Joni would have maybe like ace,
There were
king
worse
or something like
There are
that, where
worse
he's
turns.
just dead. But he actually does have 25%, and Mickey's a bit concerned. Not a great way to go out, flopping a set and a flush draw. So he's a bit nervous.
Yeah, Duek looking for that double up here. Turn is the ace of hearts, and now Duek needs to improve or else he'll be our 5th place finisher. He's got 16 outs though. Club's going for him. Board pairs also with that set and the flush.
He doesn't believe. Puts the chips in the middle.
Gotta jinx him somehow. Here you go.
Tries to go for reverse jinx. Some strong strategies here.
River card is the 8 of clubs.
It works.
Pull those chips back, sir.
All right, Mickey Duek receives the double up that he was looking for, and God, look at these stack sizes. It is so tight there.
Oh yeah, it's really only Sipila that's
Sickest fucking jinx I've ever had in my life.
out in front. Everyone else bunched together. Duek right back into the thick of it.
That's how superstitions gets built up, you know. You do certain things, it works out. Now you can never go back now.
All right, if you're catching us on YouTube, please hit that like button. If we get to 150 likes in the next couple of minutes, we'll extend this for 1 more
I
hour.
have 3 stacks of green.
I know you guys are big PLO fans. Don't want to let you down, so we'll be kind here. We'll trade some engagement for another hour of the show. So if you guys could play along, that'd be awesome.
Guys, help yourself and click the like button.
Yeah, let's go. Come on.
It's not a lot to ask.
So Mickey is now catching up to the rest of the field. 47 big blinds for Mickey. Equal stacks with Ben Tollerene and Ben Lamb. And then just a little bit above that on 66 big blinds we have Joni, and then the chip leader here, Sammy Sipila. 95 big blinds, and Mickey picks up another very playable hand. Jack, Jack, 9-9 double suited. Again, could be a raise. I think the Finns would raise that, but he's going to take the more conservative approach and start with a limp. Ben Lamb has a pretty crusty hand in the big blind, a small blind, makes the call, getting a good price here, and Ben certainly takes the flop as well. I mean, he can just knuckle it back.
Sorry, honey.
A little needle.
All good.
Everyone flops a little piece. Mickey has a straight flush draw, the Queen of Hearts. I mean, we've already seen quads today.
50.
Very small bet on the flop. Ben has Queen 10, but really no other draw. Gets out of the way. Ben has a 10 as well. He has threes alongside, which doesn't seem like much, but he can turn a boat. It's also he's also getting a very good price. But things better.
And Duek chips up a little more.
I would have
He's
much rather have been Sipila.
I hear you.
on the right track.
Why? Why?
Mickey definitely knows how
It's
to,
been a while.
Piece
watch
of shit,
you
dude.
guys.
What do you want?
to rub it in.
All right, so Mickey Duek there, the first player to get a full double up at this final table. Let me remind you of an upcoming match we have on PokerGO. Watch on Tuesday, November 12 at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific as High Stakes Duel 5 kicks off between Patrick Antonius and Jared Blesnick. 50K a pop, half no limit, half PLO, and guess what? The stakes will double until a player quits. So this will be a fun match to follow between one of the most talkative and one of the most stoic players in the history of the game. So let us know in the chat who you think is going to do this thing. All right, we hit 150 likes. We'll extend for 1 hour here on YouTube. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Leave a friendly comment below the stream. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have lots of good stuff. We've posted some extended highlights of the Negreanu win on the YouTube channel as well. So I hope you guys are entertained by all of it. By the way, Donnie, High Stakes Poker, No Gamble in the Future, so many cool clips coming out. I know you're having a hard time but trying to keep up with all these shows. Give us, pick a show and tell people a reason why they should watch, like, let's say, like the most recent episode. Give us a reason.
High Stakes Poker.
Okay.
I mean, Helmuth is back on.
Okay.
And I mean, that's kind of enough said right there.
I mean,
usually it ends in some sort of Helmuth blow-up. That's been like the result of every time he's been on.
Donnie, I don't want to call them blow-ups anymore. They're meltdowns.
He really does melt down.
Yeah.
I mean, it is incredible. I mean, we saw him on No Gamble in the Future throw the mic pack, right?
Yes,
I mean, we saw that.
That was good.
I mean, it's just...
But yeah, there were some good hands as of recently. By the way, Jennifer Tilly was involved in a very sick hand. Aces versus Kings and Kings. I won't spoil the result, but that clip is on the YouTube channel. By the way, 480 in the middle here, 864. Jouhkimainen flops top set. He's also got a pair along with it and a gut shot straight draw.
So Sammy opened wide under the gun.
200,000.
Again, he keeps trying to accumulate chips. And Joni, usually when he calls pre, he's not going to hit this board that well from this position. So he's a very disguised hand here with a set. And Sipila with the top pair blocker is trying to steal this. Joni with the smooth call. So this could develop into an interesting hand. Depends what the turn brings. If the turn brings in a king or a queen, for example. Or ace of clubs, adding the flush draw to Joni, but also Sipila picks up some blocker here. The king of clubs could become relevant on some of the rivers. Now the question is, does he want to keep representing a big hand or not on the ace? Surely he's going to have aces sometimes, but his hand is a tough one to keep barreling because he just has no equity to work with. He has no straight draw, no flush draw. It's a tough sell. Also, Joni called the flop with another player behind. Okay. Fin
stay
on
on the
fin
gas, or-
violence. This is a big bet.
600,000.
So Joni loved it on the flop. I think he still likes this. Of course, he has a set and a flush draw and a straight draw. But he might be a little bit concerned. Just a tiny bit. 2% concerned, 98% ecstatic. I'm sure he's just going to call and see how things develop on the river.
Call.
Also, just because he wants to keep in the bluffs. Sipila, very unhappy to see this call. He thinks he wants a club, doesn't get it, and he's sitting there with a naked pair of eights. So he's trying to range Joni now. What did Joni call on the flop, call on the turn? I mean, there are some draws that bust. He could have a club draw, but he does give up. And Joni is now considering to value bet or not with a set of eights. This pot is already very big. So I'm not sure if Joni wants to go for some value, but facing a check, I mean, he can beat a hand like ace-8, ace-6, ace-4, maybe a set of fours, but I think those hands, like a set of fours, for example, would probably just block bet the river himself. Is this hand too good to check back in a 2 million chip pot?
I know we can obviously see the cards, so it obviously makes things easier for us, but in a tournament setting, it's not always just so black and white that you're just always betting, you're always checking. Cash game, you probably just bet this hand for sure, right? Tournaments, you have to think about your stack, your tournament life, where you are on the leaderboard, all that sort of stuff comes into play. Not that Joni, it wasn't going to bet the hand, but you have to consider all these like additional factors that are at play.
For sure, it's not only do you have the best hand, it is can a worse hand call you, will a worse hand call you? And that's really the question, like what hand does Sammy bet very large in the turn that now plays check call on the river? And there are a few.
What a fucking bluff. What a bluff. Show him 7, 8, 9, 10.
Do you have clubs?
Show him a 7.
Yeah.
Fuck. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, clubs would have been interesting indeed because Sipila would have picked up the nut blocker and Joni would have had a flush.
And it sounds like Sipila would have barreled with the way that he was talking there.
For
And
sure,
then-
that was the plan. I think when
Yeah.
he says that, I think basically what he's saying is he bet the turn only because he had the
You
king
had a
of
plan,
clubs
king
and had
of
this
clubs.
backup plan on the river.
Yeah.
And a good story. And a good
And
story.
this is sort of the first.
I don't know how good the story is.
This is
but
the first hand that goes against Sipila on this final table. First, I wouldn't say misstep, but it's certainly a pretty large pot he lost there against his fellow Finnish friend, Joni Jouhkimainen.
Yeah, and it moves Joni up into the chip lead now. They essentially swap positions there. So we'll see if Joni starts to press on the gas a little bit more here.
10 seconds.
Might start right here.
Well, I mean, if he raises this hand, it certainly means he wants to take control of this table now. He has the ace. Not much else to work with, but he's starting to apply pressure.
Could start to see some kind of dynamic shift here. We had seen Sipila being that aggressor, raising a lot, and then Joni was kind of just playing a little bit more conservative. Now, given the big stack shifts over to Joni, who's on the direct left of Sipila, maybe Sipila decides to, you know, pull back a couple gears, and that allows Joni to now open things up. So pay attention to that.
For sure, these two guys are raising the most with the most speculative hands, and it has been working out pretty well. So they keep accumulating chips. I wonder how the other three players will adjust to that, if at all.
You had one pair? Which pair?
Donnie, question coming in on PokerGO chat about the entries in the satellite. How many are you expecting to get via the satellite? I know last year it was quite a popular event.
Yeah, I'll just look up last year. How about that?
Yeah.
So there is a $10,000 satellite to the $100,000 Super High Roller PLO event. That happens tomorrow. Sipila gives up and surrenders the 9-7-7-6. Wants to slow things down a little bit. Joni picking up some steam, some confidence, some chips.
Last year they had 20 entries in the satellite, gave away 2 seats. Lou Garza and Chino Reem were the winners of those 2 seats. I think the timing might be a little bit better this time around. Last time, due to some scheduling stuff, we had to have Super High Rollerball PLO before the
My
PGT
clubs weren't
PLO
that high.
Series. So a little bit weird if you think about how that plays out. But
Yeah.
this year, we have this series
I would've
leading in
used
to that big
probably
event.
This many.
So tomorrow, I'm guessing a lot of the people that
Come,
played
yeah.
at the PGT PLO Series,
Okay,
that,
this guy
that may
doesn't
not
have
just be
anything,
like a guaranteed shot into the 100K. Will fire into the satellite. I'm sure other players that are going to play the 100K might just play the satellite anyway, try and get a cheaper buy-in. So I would expect, you know, at least around the same 20 entries, if not push closer to 30, which would be great.
Ben Tollerene finds aces. Gonna see him come in for the raise here to 120.
I wonder if Nachito plays the 10K satellite or not.
I mean,
Are there any sports tomorrow? Is it?
I
Is
mean, it
there
doesn't-
anything to bet on?
It doesn't matter because you can just watch it while you play.
Yeah, he was watching some NFL during the 25K, and it reminded me of Negreanu during the 5K, just like
Right.
walking around, screaming around, giving some action, not on the table, but in the sports bet.
You need that kind of person in the tournament to keep it lively. 3-6 deuce, 2 spades out there. Tollerene with the ace of spades blocker.
Could be a very interesting hand. So Ben Lamb defended from the big blind. This board is better for the big blind than the under the gun razor. He has a 6, not much else to work with. And Ben has a hand that is not going to make any better hand fold on the flop. He has this backup ace of spades. I would say in theory this is a hand that certainly wants to check back and utilize the ace of spades later. Could also have the best hand right now. So I wonder if he...
Check.
Yeah, he will check back. This is just this straightforward way of playing this. Turn is a 7. So Ben Tollerene pairs the 7. Ben Lamb still not much to work with but the 6. But he could start applying pressure.
Seconds.
No?
190.
And Lamb bets 190 on the turn. Is Lamb setting himself up here for 2 barrels? Like what sort of thought process is he going through here?
I'd say the main thought is please fold, because I don't have much of a plan with this hand. Doesn't mean I don't like the bet. This board is quite bad for under the gun. But it's certainly the kind of hand that doesn't really know what to do, and a lot of rivers unimproved. So it will be interesting to see if the river brings in an 8, for example. I mean, that's a good card to barrel, but what if the river is a jack or a spade? It is an ace. So Lamb improves to aces and 6s. Obviously, Tollerene has top set. So now Ben has to think, do I want to value bet this and make a hand like an ace with a spade draw, something along those lines, call? Or do I want to check, which he probably will do because this card favors Tollerene a lot.
10 seconds.
But it's very hard to get away from this once he checks. He has a6, the spades have busted, doesn't have a spade in his hand. So this is going to be an unfortunate spot either way for Ben Lamb. He's going to lose a lot of chips in this hand, one way or the other.
So Tollerene with that top set of aces.
Check.
Lamb decides to check. He'll be facing a bet here for sure.
So Ben, again, very theoretically oriented, thinks about what are my value bets here, what is the weakest hand I would value bet. It is probably a hand like a7, a6, a6, a7. So he's going to go big. He might even pot the river.
Time extension.
And Tollerene is the type of player that could bluff in this spot. That makes it so difficult for Ben Lamb to get away from this hand, even if he were to face a large bet, which he probably will. So Ben here is considering, should I bet small or big?
Check.
Wow, he checks.
Wow, Lamb checks behind, afraid of what
Bad check.
Ben Lamb
Bad
might
check.
do.
Oh, he's going to be very unhappy to see that. The Finns are dazzled for sure.
I mean, if we're checking behind top set in situations like this tournament is never going to end. Okay, let's be real. Let's be real, top set. You got to bet that, Ben Tollerene. Come on. Of course, who am I? Anyway, all jokes aside, Kalshi.com/PokerGo. Kalshi is the first legal exchange in the U.S. where you can trade on the outcome of the upcoming election. Right now on Kalshi.com, markets are available for who will win the presidential election, who will control the House and Senate, who will win swing states, and much more. Sign up now at Kalshi.com/PokerGo, and the first 500 traders who deposit $100 will get a free $20 credit. Own the outcome at Kalshi.com/PokerGo.
You got 2 million, Mickey?
Probably the worst
1-8.
result coming out of that hand for Tollerene is the fact that he had to show it to the other. Like, if you're Sammy Sipila, Joni Jouhkimainen, and you see he's checking back there, that tells you how he's approaching the final table, right? So maybe you start pressuring him in some spots going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tollerene kind of probably felt a bit embarrassed by the end as well, especially once Ben Lamb turns over ace-6, which is a hand that certainly pays some bet on the river. So I wonder like how that also influences his strategy now. He's like, wait a moment, what am I doing here? Trying to pull my way to the win? Let's start playing some poker. Speaking of poker, Duek with his patented limp comes in. This is a great hand to raise. You block the aces, but actually in this case, he's running into aces still. Joni Jouhkimainen here with ace, ace, king deuce with clubs on the button.
180. Raise 180.
It's a great spot for Joni. He has been taking control of this final table after winning a big hand against Sipila, and this could look like a weak hand, or at least a wide range. Duek with ace, king, queen, 5, obviously strongly dominated, but he limped to call. So he's going to see a flop, and there are a couple of flops, especially an ace-high flop, which would offer a real danger here to Mickey.
Time extension.
Queen 10-8, 2 diamonds out there. Duek catching top pair, top kicker, but that's not the type of hand you're necessarily looking for. But he does have a straight option to go along with it.
So none of the players are going to be too happy with this flop. But Joni has some options. He has the ace of diamonds. He has backdoor clubs. He has the nut gut shot. He just wants to check. In this case, I think so. And see how things develop. You can still utilize the ace of diamonds later on. You can improve. You might have the best hand, and so on. So turn is the diamond, in fact. Mickey, on the other side, also has a diamond. So ace, king, queen, 5. He has to consider now, do I want to turn my hand into a bluff at this point, or is ace, queen good enough to show down? Goes for the check. Back to Joni. Joni has the ace of diamonds, and I think he wants to bet. He does have a pair of aces, but a pair of aces is hard to show down here as the best hand. A lot of better hands out there, 2 pairs and straights. And those hands could and usually would fold in the process of a big bet on the turn and on the river.
That's 275.
Time extension.
You might think, well, how can he represent the nut flush? Isn't that a hand betting on the flop? Not necessarily. If he has ace, ace, forward 3, for example, with nut diamonds, like those hands don't want to bet the flop and blow up the pot and get check raised by a set or a straight. So Joni can certainly still represent the nuts here after checking back the flop.
I didn't realize I had a fucking diamond.
You had what?
I had a diamond. I was probably going to lead the turn. I thought I didn't have a diamond.
Yeah, so that's actually pretty lucky for Mickey, because if he would have led the turn, would not have worked out, because Joni had the best diamond there to represent the nuts. And he loses kind of the minimum in this hand by just jack folding the turn. But again, we talked in the beginning of this final table about the clash of styles, and we did, in fact, see Mickey limping a lot of hands and calling raises the fins. They keep raising wide ranges. Ben Tollerene checking back top set. Very, very different players here on this table. And we will see who will prevail across this deep stack situation in the 25K championship. Sipila has been very active in the beginning, backs off, after Joni now not only picks up control, like he picks up control of the table, but he also picks up a lot of good hands. King, king, 6-5 now in the cutoff.
10 seconds.
Ben Lamb folds the singles to the jacks. Looks like Tollerene has a playable hand.
10 seconds. Time extension.
This would be a very tricky spot facing a 3-bet with king, king, 6-5. Ben is sitting on 50 big blinds and has more chips than Mickey, more chips than Ben Lamb. So it's difficult to know what to do, but he's going to go for the 3-bet.
What should you start the hand with?
I don't know what Tollerene has, but King 6-5 doesn't do well against aces.
Sorry.
He is in position, but this is a very tricky spot on the final
1.68
table for Joni Jouhkimainen. If he's up against aces, there aren't many flops. He's going to like, if he's up against a hand like ace, king, queen, jack or so, he's doing well. Joni can just fold and live another day, protect his chip stack. He is in command. He has control of this table. Or he can call and try to bust Ben Tollerene at the chances of losing half his stack.
How much does image play into this too? Because obviously, you know, we just saw the hand where he checks back the set of aces. It does seem like Tollerene's been taking a more cautious approach, so maybe that alerts some kind of red flags to Joni.
It does. Also, the fact that Tollerene is covering Mickey and Lamb makes him also play more conservatively, but he does make the call. And Tollerene does have aces. 9-9-4 is a flop that might cost Joni additional chips.
How confident are you with a hand like Tollerene has and seeing this sort of flop come out?
I mean, he doesn't have diamonds, so that's not great, because you don't necessarily want your opponent to continue that much and make your life difficult in position. 9-9-4. Sure, there are a good amount of connected combos, rundowns that connect with the 9. On the other side, he doesn't have a king in his hand, so kings is reasonably likely for Joni. So Ben is considering, do I want to bet now or just make this a bit smaller and try to check to the turn and then start deciding? But I'd say theoretically you probably want to put out a small bet and start putting some chips into the middle.
180.
Right, 180,000. He is going to get value from flush draws, kings, queens. Joni has a straightforward call. He can't really do much. He's going to be ahead against some bluffs. He's behind against aces and a 9, but he has some outs.
10 seconds.
So yeah, you can't call pre and then fold this flop for 180. Gonna see a turn. And that's the tricky thing with calling pre-flop with kings. You're very often in the situation that if your opponent has aces, you're going to be so much behind. You don't really know what to do.
That's my standard mode when playing PLO. I just don't really know what to do. There's so much out there, so much possible. And Tollerene in this spot as the player leading the betting. How do we approach a turn card like this? Double flush draw out there. You still have the overpair, but it's not comfortable.
It's not comfortable. I think you probably want to get more chips in the middle, but you don't want to pot. You can get value again by overpairs. There are flush draws you can put into a tough spot. So
But like why are overpairs incentivized to continue when you have kings, queens, or jacks?
Because of the sizing. So if he's going to go something like 250 now, it's so small that if Ben Tollerene is bluffing, you just can't fold given the price. So I think blocking the turn is an option or checking.
275.
Oh wow, you got it almost spot on there, betting 275. So very small bet from Tollerene.
Yeah, this is like the reason you don't want to pot here if you're at home and you're tempted to pot is because you're just going to isolate yourself against a 9. And there's still value to be gained.
1.24.
And there's protection to be gained as well. There are some hands, there are some weak flush draws that might just want to fold now because Tollerene is going to have a 9 or aces with a flush draw here quite often. Tollerene is not going to have rainbow aces pre-flop. On a side note, when he 3-bets, usually just calls. So the flush draw overpair combination is a real threat. Joni makes the call. Again, it is very tough to fold for this price.
River card is the queen of clubs, completing backdoor flush draw. Also, that pair he could have lured in to see the river could also be queens.
Sure. Flush draws are there, queens are there. Probably Joni would jam the turn with a 9 given the presence of 2 flush draws. So 9x is very unlikely. But flushes are possible. Ben does not have a value bet anymore. Now it's too thin, and he just wants to balance his timing and check. And then Joni with kings. I mean, you're not too happy either way. Like, it is Ben 86 after all. He could check hold river with a hand like aces with a nut flush to induce. He could have, I suppose, a boat sometimes, but usually not. So Joni has the king of clubs. Is he going to turn it into a bluff? He is happy to see the check, but he also knows very much he loses against aces, which is very likely what Ben has. So he's thinking, should I try to make aces fold? It would be a big play. I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be a big play. It would be such a big play.
Do you think that Joni is leaning towards Ben having aces based on how the hand played out? The fact that he 3-bet pre, fired both flop and turn?
His pre-flop range is very much weighted towards aces, and I think Joni's instincts tell him, I don't have the best hand here, and there is a chance I can win this. Yeah, I think he knows, I don't have the best hand, but I could make him fold. No.
Checks behind with a look on his face of, I think I know what you have, but I'm not sure if I can make you fold. But of course, Tollerene has to fold if a sizable bet shows up there on the river.
I think if Joni has a amazing day, he's going to find a jam. Like, there are days, I think, where he can go all in on the river there. But on the other side, Ben 86, tough opponent.
Tough opponent who checked back top set of aces, so who knows what's still possible here at this final table. $5 million invitation free roll organized by Club WPT Gold. Go sign up right now at clubwptgold.com for your chance to win a golden passport. That event will have $1 million first prize, maybe the largest free roll in poker history. December 13th in Las Vegas, this thing plays out at the World Poker Tour Championship, and you can be part of it if you get lucky, so sign up right now. The reason why I brought up the top set, how much do you think that impacts the way players view him in this moment? Or is that just another hand that played out a certain way and these guys won't add too much value to it?
I played against Ben in other events, and this one included. I mean, he bluffs. He finds bluffs in spots where other people don't. So he's not afraid. And I think the players on this table, they know that. It's probably a head scratch moment of like, why is he checking back top set? But probably not much more, to be honest, because he has earned the credit to be a phenomenal player and know when to bluff. So I think that everyone was surprised that he had top set there, but I think that they know he's still capable. And I think Joni is a bit. He's certainly second-guessing his decision a bit. Because he knew he's not going to win this hand. And on the other side, Tollerene really had the absolute best outcome possible. He got value pre-flop, on the flop, on the turn, and got the free showdown on the river. So that hand went really well for Ben.
Yeah, and Ben, with that hand, vaults up towards the top of the counts. Joni still ahead of him, but these two stacks are definitely biggest now as we see three-way action developing here. Kings for Sipila, Joni with the Queen Jack 10-8, and Lamb again a bit more speculative than his opponents. Jack 7-10, 2 diamonds. Sipila with the open-ended straight flush draw. Ace of diamonds maybe one time? Would that be kind of cool?
Yeah, usually you don't love to defend the 3 kings, but if you have diamonds alongside, of course, getting a good price. Some flops you're going to like, and this is one of them. And everyone flopped a piece. So Joni has flopped top 2. He also has a gut shot. Ben has flopped 2 pair. And pretty much anyone in this hand would be happy to see a free card.
10 seconds.
280.
That's 280.
Ben Lamb not looking for any free cards just yet. 280 in hopes of thinning this field out a little bit. Now, how do you approach usually with a hand like Sipila does?
He could go both ways. I mean, the bet looks strong, but how bad can it be to raise? I think because it is a tournament, maybe you lean more towards calling. Again, losing chips hurts you more than winning chips helps you, courtesy of the ICM. So he wants to be maybe a bit careful. But on the other side, if he raises, what is Lamb really going to do with Jack 7 in this instance, for example? So Ben Lamb kind of read into the 2 checks.
Oh, hello.
Raise 9.
900 is the raise from Sipila, applying all the pressure here. And now, is Lamb going to ask himself, why did I bet this flop?
Oh, yes. If this would be a cash game, Ben might just say, you know what, you probably have a draw. I'm all in. Let's see what happens. I'm not sure if that will change. It is, I mean, maybe he would always fold, but I don't think in a cash game he would just fold. Sipila shows him the 3 kings.
3 kings.
I mean, everyone knows what the last card was, I would assume.
Royal draw.
I mean, I'm not fucking around.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys at home picked up on that,
it's
but
like-
Joni instantly said royal draw, and then Sipila said, I'm not effing around in a spot like that, which this goes to show how deep this runs. These guys know each other so well.
Yeah, so Sipila took a chance there by check raising. He could have also called, and he got a really good outcome because he made the best hand fold, picks up a nice hand, and Ben Lamb certainly regrets the bet on the flop there. Probably read into the 2 checks a bit too much, thinking his hand will just pick up the pot there. So Ben Lamb lost so far the most chips on this final table, 775K. Things not going his way. Ben Tollerene on the other side.
10 seconds.
He is
Raise
about
120.
breaking even so far. Lost a big hand when bluffing into quads. Extracted good value from the aces. Makes it 120K. Picks up the blinds.
So we're about to enter the 3rd level of play at this final table.
break,
Still
is it?
5-handed. Players guaranteed
$1
$160,000.
million free roll. 2,000 players converge on December 13th in Las Vegas. One person will win $1 million. Will it be you? Sign up now at clubwptgold.com using code PokerGO to be entered for a chance to win.
Thanks, man.
He's one of my favorite PLO players ever.
What's that?
Welcome back
He's one of
to
my
the
favorites.
PGT PLO Series presented by
be
PLO Mastermind. Apologies for me stepping on that commercial there. I was a little distracted. But yes, the blinds are now up. We're going to play 25K, 50K with the 50K big blind ante. Still 5-handed. And I was going to say they're all guaranteed $116,000 as of right now, with just shy of $500,000 up top for the winner. If you're catching us on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're on PokerGo, also please send in your questions or requests. We have JNandez, the man, the myth, the legend, in the house with us. He cashed in this event, sadly fell just short of the final table stream, but at least he busted in time to join us, so at least we're benefiting from this.
That was my goal. Ben Tollerene picks up ace king king 8. Easy raise.
525.
And we're getting creative and spicy here. Sam Sipila picks up the ace 8-7-6, not double suited. He does have that key blocker, which is the ace. And this is a trouble spot for Ben. I think he's going to fold this hand because we're talking here chip leader on chip leader. With ace king king, which performs very poor against aces. This is a tough spot. I think in the book, how deep are these guys? I think we're looking at 77 big blinds. I think this would be a fold. just fold and live another day before playing a huge hand against what is most likely aces.
10 seconds.
And maybe Sammy reads into the aces check back right now, thinking Ben Tollerene has been approaching this final table a little bit conservative. And he picks up a big pot. I mean, not only a decently sized pot, but he's also showing how comfortable he is with final table dynamics, utilizing the key blocker there. When you 3-bet with a hand like that, the main thing you want to think about is your opponent aware of ICM? And can they let big hands go? Like in this case, ace, king, king.
Thank you.
And Sipila made a really good read there.
Thank you.
Folds at the ace, king, king, 8. Really shows the experience that Sipila has. He has made so many of these final tables in the last year. Knows exactly where his opponents are at and how to exploit that. Very impressive performance. Joni picks up 9, 6, 5, 3. He's thinking, how wide do I want to raise here? Ben Lamb has been fighting back, though. He has been 3-betting before. So he backs off, and that's a very poor hand in the small blind. Queen 9, 5, 3. No suit. He is getting a phenomenal price, but this is such a bad hand. So we'll try to see a flop.
It would be super sick if they had like one of these TVs with like the screen, but like the card's not showing, just so we could like see the chip counts and shit. You know what I mean?
Are these the kind of
That'd be,
situations
like,
where
super
you would
sick.
tell players you coach, don't even
Really?
bother limping
Or
in a hand like
whatever,
this?
Depends who the big blind
somewhere
is.
that
I mean, you
everybody
are getting a
can
good
look at
price.
it.
As you can see,
Yeah.
Ben Tollerene picks up a relatively bad hand, but
I mean,
good
it's-
blockers
yeah,
and goes
that
for the
was
raise.
Like, you know how like they have
On a
the
stacked
names
table
on
like
top
this,
with like all the, like after each hand.
Probably
and
not going to
everything?
work.
That would be
Limp
like-
that wide.
That way you don't have to write it down on a piece of paper. Nobody has to keep asking.
Yeah, slightly less. I'm feeling 2, 4, 2.
And I think what Ben 86 is realizing, or Ben Tollerene realizes here right now, is that these fins, they are speeding in various spots. And he's thinking to himself, how should I adjust to this? Because these guys are not backing off. They keep raising, they keep re-raising.
But, you know, isn't it sort of risky to start trying to fight them where they are most comfortable?
It definitely is. It definitely is. He's also thinking, well, we have 2 other players that are short stacked right now. So he's a little bit handcuffed in that way. But at the other side, on the other side, all the players in this table, they want to win this tournament.
Time extension.
You look like you just made the tightest fall of your life.
It might have been.
What's next for
Oh, is it
PLO
recording?
Mastermind? What are you guys currently working on? What do you have in the works? Of course, for those that are tuning in, PLO Mastermind is the presenting sponsor of this series, and you can check them out on plomastermind.com/PokerGo. And I'm always curious to hear like what you guys have in the works.
Well, whenever we get closer to Black Friday, we do something we call the 100K Playbook Series, which is on YouTube for free, on my YouTube channel. And basically it's a 2 to 3 day event where I usually talk about how I look at the current PLO landscape, opportunities and possibilities. Usually answer questions like, if you want to head into PLO and start a transition maybe from no limit hold'em, how would I start? Where would I start? How would I do it? If you currently play PLO, smaller stakes, mid stakes, you want to move up in levels. Like, how would I approach this in 2024, 2025? So definitely keep your eyes out for that, because this is a YouTube series that I put together every year in November, and we take it offline afterwards. So this is something that a lot of people find value in. Make sure to check it out.
You heard the man. Better listen up if you want to learn.
And as you guys can tell, PLO is certainly gaining in popularity steadily over the last couple of years. More tournaments, plenty of cash games, adding cards, 4 cards, 5 cards, 6 cards. When does it stop?
Yeah, I mean, at what point does it become too much of a variance fest? You know, I even watched the short deck PLO poker after dark cash game session featuring Ben Lamb, and that was just complete shenanigans in my mind.
Yeah, you always want to add variables to the game of poker to make it more complex, but also more interesting. And I think, in my personal opinion, adding more cards or removing cards from the deck is not the best mechanism to use. But what I like to see is progressive knockouts, ICM structures, like that mystery bounties.
Right.
Like, you keep the game simple in itself, but there are other elements that spice things up. For example, the idea of a payout structure, like in a tournament, does add new elements to the game without making the game in itself more complicated. It's still 4 cards, or it's still 2 cards, the same game essentially. But I'm sure a lot of guys listening, they know how these things come about. You play cash, it's a private game. VIP comes in and says, you know what, I heard that if you add another card to the deck and we all stand up and then the 7 dues and if you, it's all good. And then suddenly you're playing some sort of Uno game and we're gambling, you know.
How about this for a turn card here? 3 of a kind kings for Sipila, full house for Duek. Full house remains good here on the river. Juicy pot too, up over 1.1 million.
This is tricky. Sipila turning the king into a bluff. Sipila figured on the turn. I don't have a club, but I do have that king. And Duek probably has a flush. And Sipila knows he doesn't have the best hand here after getting called the turn. So the only question is, do I want to put my opponent to the ultimate test? And he is going to do just that.
Which puts Duek all in here. Duek 890 behind. There was over 1.1 behind. Of course, plenty of bigger full houses out there could beat Mickey Duek here. This was a limped pot. Duek came in from the small blind. Sipila raised. He called.
Good call.
He's got it. Forceful. Another double up for Mickey Duek.
That was very interesting. So you might think on the river this is an automatic call, but at the end of the day, he only had a bluff catcher. But the table is aware. Sipila is capable. Sipila is not just playing ABC straightforward poker. And this time it works out very much in the favor of Mickey Duek. Very Sean Winter-esque river call. The stand-up motion, sorting the cards, lifting them from the table.
Yeah, I think he said something like stupid hand.
Stupid hand.
Kind of the way it played out, you know, like this is silly. If I'm beat here, I got myself into this, you know.
You can tell who his mentor is. I played a couple hours with Sean Winter in this event, and well, actually, I busted him, so shout out to Sean Winter. But his favorite antics
Daddy's got
this time around
now,
was
boys.
he would sort his folding hands every single
Papa's
time.
got
He would
some
like lift them up,
chips.
sort them around,
Sorry,
and then
Sean.
fold. I'm not sure why exactly, but
That's funny.
it's a classic Sean Winter
3.
Sean Winter antics.
Do you think someone is able to kind of make a living playing
God, we're gonna handle
PLO
fucking
tournaments
you from golf
specifically?
tomorrow.
In No Limit Hold'em, I mean, you can be a No Limit Hold'em tournament player, you can be a No Limit Hold'em cash game player, but are we getting to the point where there's enough PLO tournaments
Bet
to
it's
be
not
played,
that
or do you need to,
Probably won't be.
you know, play cash games as well
No,
if you want to
that's
go down the PLO route?
So a bit much in it.
It might be. It might be. It depends a bit. I mean,
You're funnier when you have chips. You were miserable just like 45 seconds ago.
the thing.
It's crazy how that works.
super weird.
I mean, playing tournaments for a living in itself is a challenge. Because
It's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. Don't try to sell people on that dream.
the variance is big. You're really gonna love it. That is for sure. But then if you play high stakes, I mean, it's what I can say is like
2.9.
all the pro players in this tournament, their main source of income comes from cash. At least for the most part of the career.
Do you think that a lot of these guys play tournaments also because it's good for the ego to get a little trophy in the case?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun. It is also good value. Like the thing about tournaments, and one of the reasons why they are so popular these days is because of the privatization of cash games.
Right.
So if you want to play for a lot of money, these days, you usually end up playing tournaments unless you're invited to a private game. So it is also a way for some of the best players in the world that wouldn't get invited to a private game to compete for a lot of money. It comes with the big variance. We see here a raised pot, couple of limpers, Joni with the raise, he has the aces. King 8-4, a set for Ben Tollerene, and Joni has an interesting hand because he did flop the ace of clubs.
Also, if you're Tollerene, worth noting that he does have a king in his hand, so denying somebody from having him in a set over set situation here a little bit, so he must feel a little bit more confident in his holding.
That certainly plays into his decision making for sure. They are quite deep, and Ben Lamp is quite short, so this is a bit of a tricky spot for Tollerene because I think Joni wants to bet. The board is disconnected enough where there are a good amount of hands that will fold. It's a relatively small bet so far. I think Ben Tollerene, if he would face a large bet, probably just wants to call and see how things develop. Against a small bet, I think he's also going to just call. But this could end up turning out to be quite tricky because if he now calls and then the turn brings in the club, it's going to be really difficult to get the showdown. I wonder what he's going to do against a small bet. I guess he's going to... I guess he's going to raise. Okay, he's going to raise. That's a great result for him because he's going to get the block out of the way.
And a quick fold here from Jouhkimainen, and Ben Tollerene takes this one down, and that puts him rather firmly in the chip lead here. Ben Tollerene, as always, just a hand or two away from being in full control. This man is simply unstoppable. He's had some major swings at this final table so far, but everything going his way for now. All right, while you're watching, check out Kalshi, the first legal exchange in the U.S. where you can trade on the outcome of the U.S. election. Right now on Kalshi.com, markets are available for who will win the presidential election, who will control the House and Senate, who will win swing states, and more. Sign up now at Kalshi.com/PokerGo. The first 500 traders who deposit $100 will get a free $20 credit. Own the outcome at Kalshi.com/PokerGo. All right, a couple more minutes left here on our free preview on YouTube. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll have highlights from this final table tomorrow, most likely.
And this is how it goes. Like sometimes, I mean, these spins, they're active, but they're also swingy. Sipila lost 2 big pots so far, one against Joni, where he was bluffing, and one against Duek, where he was also bluffing. He does pick up a lot of chips uncontested, but the thing is, the table is also starting to pick up on the fact that he is quite active and goes after these pots. So he has been swinging downwards now, 885,000 chips since the start of the final table. The big winners here, Mickey Duek up 1.5 million chips since the beginning.
Yeah, Duek, the only one who got himself a full double up. Looked a little bleak there for a second when he was behind on the turn, but the river came through for him when he hit his club flush.
This hand's starting off interesting, just given the fact that Duek is now opted to come in with a raise. Before this, we've only seen him limp, right? So now, Tollerene gets out of the way as the chip leader. Duek is effectively the chip leader for the remainder of this hand, so he comes in with an aggressive approach to start.
Feels like a confidence play. He won some pots. He put those fins in their place, and
Yeah, ride the high. Let's go.
exactly.
10 seconds.
Now just
Why
bet
not?
this flop and you'll win.
Goes for the very tiny bet. He has a wrap. But what can Ben really do? He folds, and not much has been going his way so far.
And the more Duek wins, the more, I guess, outgoing he gets. It's not necessarily chatty, but he has some more life now that he's sitting on a big stack. Ben Lamb, the short stack with 19 big blinds. At the start of this final table, it was Mickey Duek, the short stack with 45 big blinds. We're in our third level of play. You know, the stacks have gotten a bit shallower, but still lots of play left here at this final table.
I feel like Ben Lamb hates this. Like he to me, is a type of player who wants to be involved a lot. He wants to play hands. He wants to really lean on that experience. And he's just kind of handcuffed now. He can't really do anything, you know?
For sure. I mean, at this point, he chipped down enough to the point where now he kind of wants to not necessarily gamble, but like he can look at hands like this, and I mean, this is an amazing hand, but he got raised before when he was trying to limp in with a very weak hand. So he's coming out for the trap here, going after the chip leader. If Ben has a reasonable hand to raise, which he definitely doesn't, his plan is to limp raise. I don't think Ben will raise this hand though, because he wants to see the flop, and this hand performs really bad facing the limp raise. The trap didn't go through, and now Ben faces the overcard with the king 9-5 flop. So Tollerene can take a stab here, check behind. Both certainly a possibility. Ben Lamb picks up a 4.
And Lamb takes it down with a bet on the turn here. I saw a question earlier in the chat that I'm curious about. Someone, I can't recall who asked it, but he said, is there a difference between ICM and PLO versus ICM and Hold'em?
ICM is not a poker concept, just for people to understand that. ICM is just a mathematical formula that basically just in this poker context or in general just tells you that losing hurts more than winning, which is also, I mean, it's a psychological effect. Like losing anything usually hurts more than winning, and that's just how the brain works. And ICM puts that into numbers when it comes to poker. So it tells you basically at which point losing chips or losing your chip stack would hurt you specifically a lot. And it's basically a function of how the stacks line up against each other. So let's say there are 2 big stacks and 2 short stacks. Now your ICM risk against the other big stack, if you're one of the big stacks, is massive, which means you need a huge amount of equity to justify putting the chips in the middle. That's basically what it makes you aware of. So ICM is the same. Basically what we derive from ICM is what we call bubble factor. And that bubble factor basically describes by how much additional equity you need to justify going broke. So in this case, Ben Tollerene against Mickey Duek, they can't just get it in 50-50 because they are 2 big stacks. So they need way more equity. They might need another 10 or another 20% equity edge to get the money in. And now how that relates to PLO? Well, in PLO, it's very difficult to have these large advantages, especially pre-flop or maybe sometimes even on the flop. So basically what happens in PLO is you will see people play relatively cautious pre-flop because it's hard to have a large edge. In No Limit Hold'em, if you have aces or kings, you can be a very big favorite, and it doesn't really matter how big the ICM pressure is because aces is just that strong. In PLO, there's no hand that is that good. So you will see, generally speaking, that the mid-stack players are kind of handcuffed in PLO, more so than in No Limit Hold'em.
Meanwhile, Duek gets the check mark here with his set of 3s. Tollerene with ace-10. Does have the spade blocker. Tollerene bet 115K on the flop. Duek made the call.
10 seconds.
Not much incentive here for Duek to raise at any point, right?
So ICM, or the idea of a risk premium, continues post-flop, which means you got to be careful risking too many chips against the wrong guy, because some players can hurt your stack a lot. And this is an example. Although in this case, he has such a big hand. Duek has such a big hand. He probably wants to gain some chips. He has a set and a flush draw blocking top set.
400.
But also for people at home to understand, ICM is not a perfect representation of how you should play tournaments. It just gives you an idea of how much risk you want to take on potentially when it comes to tournaments. But ICM doesn't take a lot of other factors into account, such as what we call future game. So the ability to gain chips in the future is not part of the ICM calculation. It also doesn't take into account if you have a skill edge on the game. So if you think you're one of the better players, you might be incentivized to take less risks. And if you're one of the weaker players, you might want to play more aggressive and take chances. And all that, all these sort of soft factors are not part of the ICM calculation. And this is what makes tournaments so interesting. There is no perfect formula for no limit or PLO tournaments that really tells you how to play. It's all up for interpretation. And that's why we see players limping, some players raise big, some players raise small.
10 seconds.
Because these players, even though they're all top players, they have different interpretations of the same ICM ideas.
It's really funny to me. ICM gets thrown out a lot as a word or an abbreviation. But I feel like 95% of players never in their life study ICM. They just rely upon the knowledge that risking all your chips when you're a middling stack, when there's shorties around, is not very smart.
Exactly. It's as with anything, like a classic Danny Kruger. Like in the beginning, you hear something, you're like, oh yeah, of course I know what ICM is. But then when it goes into the deep, into depth, you just realize this is a pretty complicated subject, and there are a lot of different ways to approach it. For example, this tournament that we're talking about here is a small field tournament. So that means the top prize pays 20 times your buy-in. And that's different to when you play a tournament where the top prize pays 100 times your buy-in. So if you play a field with thousands of players, the bubble is not worth as much because, yeah, you can min cash, but if you win the top prize, you win 100 times the buy-in. And in this case, the bubble is a lot more meaningful, and so are the pay jumps, because it is not as steep at the top. So a lot of different ways to approach tournaments and understand tournaments as well. And we are still in the process with our limited technology as well to really know how tournaments are supposed to be played. Still far away from that. Even though tech develops every day and it's certainly powerful, it's still far away from understanding how to play tournament poker in an optimal way.
Donnie, speaking of playing tournament poker in an optimal way, give us the update on what has been going down inside the main tournament room here, because I've heard yelling, screaming, I've heard cussing, and I've heard you relay some of the facts. Producer Aiden has also given me, he has slipped me a note on what's been going on. Don, give us a breakdown.
Yeah, so Daniel Negreanu, everyone knows Daniel, of course. He's out here playing the 5K final event that's going on in the main room. As I understand it, he came out to play the event because he was under the impression that there would be a certain amount of points up for grabs that he could win in hopes of overtaking Matthew Wantman on the series leaderboard. That does two things. One, it allows him to, of course, win the series leaderboard, which is its own kind of tournament title in and of itself. There's an additional bonus prize that comes with it. We know Daniel loves to chase, you know, these big trophies, these leaderboards, etc. Second to that, or maybe first to that in Daniel's mind, 9 players have a $50,000 a person side bet to win the leaderboard, must win. Daniel is one of those 9. So if he were to top the leaderboard and finish the series that way, he would pocket $400K from the other players. So very important for him to be able to get the necessary points. He's 91 points behind Matthew Wantman. Now, Matthew Wantman is also in the tournament out there. So depending on how things shake out, it's likely that Matthew Wantman can lock it up with a min cash, maybe a little bit more, gets one or two pay jumps. But Daniel has had some choice words for PGT Commissioner Tim Duckworth out there, who he's been in contact with about the points. They've been kind of arguing, somewhat in jest, somewhat serious, as to what the multiplier is for the points that apply to the bounty event specifically, because those are obviously a little bit trickier when you have the bounty money taken out of the prize pool. So yeah, it's been dramatic, I would say.
Did you mention how many bullets?
Yeah, he's in. I've heard 13. I've heard 15. He's in for many, many bullets. Daniel essentially has to win that tournament to break even, which is not something that's been rare for Daniel, because we've seen him in rebuy tournaments before. Back in the day when poker was at its height, he was in the 1K at the WSB. He had to get like 6th place to break even or something insane. So Daniel's in there blasting, playing like the $3 rebuy on stars is what he's doing.
The first prize in that tournament is sponsored by Daniel Negreanu. Literally, he's got to get first.
Yeah, first place is 70K. Of course, you can obviously obtain a lot of bounties along the way, but first is 70K. He's in for at least 65, if not more. So yeah.
So a little update from that event. Live reporting available on PokerGO or on PGT.com. 9 left. Wantman is the short stack. So Donnie, does that lock it up for him? Because Negreanu is 3rd in chips.
I'd have to check the math.
Seidel also still in the hunt.
That might lock it up.
Oh boy.
So worth noting, 9th and 8th are different points. So there's a point bubble right now. And also interesting, I was out there a little while ago. Daniel was at the same table as Wantman, and he said to him, you're going to min cash and lock it up. You're going to get 9th, and I'm going to bust you. That's what Daniel said to Matthew Wantman.
No way.
And right now, Wantman is the short stack with 9 left, and Daniel has a lot of chips. So that could happen.
So yeah, some side action still ongoing. But didn't you also say that someone at this table could still win it?
Sipila or Ben Lamb. Believe both would need to win to have a shot. Of course, that is still dependent on where Matthew Wantman goes on to finish in that 5K finale. So, kind of trying to keep an eye on both things as they're happening simultaneously. So, we'll check in every now and then as it goes on.
Well, it looks like these guys are going the distance, and with that, this will be our last hand of the YouTube stream. We'll send you on over to PokerGO.com. Hopefully you can join us there for the remainder of this final table. If not, we'll have some highlights of this final table posted to YouTube in the near future. So thank you all so much for tuning in on YouTube. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you guys again for day 1 of Super High Roller Bowl PLO, which will be on Thursday night. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on those notifications so you know when we are live next.
Whoa, hold on.
Did I miss still?
I didn't look. Did anybody look?
No. I haven't looked. But
I have a feeling this card's really good though.
I haven't looked.
Wait, what are we doing? Yeah.
I just don't like the slice.
Just missteal it. It's too late.